Hey guys, it's Tia, and today I want to be talking to you a bit about warp stabilization. This thing is a godsend because if you're like me and you find that sometimes your footage is a little bit on the shaky side, then you will appreciate this. Today I'm going to give you a bit of an example. I took a handheld video of the short film that I'm currently editing, but because I wanted to be artistic and for some reason I wasn't bothered to use my gimbal in the rush of things, I decided to go handheld and move through a very complicated set of lights and people to get this nice circular pan around the family in the film. Even though the footage came out okay, there's still a bit of shake in it and it just doesn't make it look smooth and seamless like I wanted it to. So I decided let me try and do as much as I could to fix it on Premiere Pro. So I'm going to show you that whole process, but I'm also going to show you something really cool that I learned on Premiere Pro about warp stabilization and really getting into like that nitty-gritty about how to use it and the different things you can do about it. So let's get started. So here is that short clip just on its own right here. I know it's shaky, I'm sorry, but sometimes these things happen and that's what this is for. Don't rely on this because this is not meant to be like, oh, let me take this bunch of shaky footage so I can fix it in post. Try your best not to fix it in post, but this is just for those cases where there's nothing you can do and you have to. So here we go. The first thing that you should be doing is going to your effects tab, typing in that little search bar warp stabilizer, and it'll come right under distort. Drag it and drop it into the clip that you are editing. Now I recommend that when you're using warp stabilization, please save your project. Warp stabilization is a really heavy tool, and chances are your computer is going to get slow, start heating up when you're doing this. Premiere Pro, as any Premiere Pro editor knows, loves to glitch, and most importantly, loves to crash. PTSD. Okay. Cool, so now everything's rendered. Let's go into the warp stabilization and let's have a look at the different types there are and maybe what would work best for yours. Go into the effect control tab, scroll down to stabilization, and you can see there it says smooth motion and no motion. Basically, your four options are position, scale, rotation, perspective, and subspace warp. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply one of each option to each clip so that way you can get a good comparison of what each one does. Now, be warned, each clip is going to say stabilizing. It's going to say that for a while, so just be patient until you just get what you want. Try and do this on shorter clips. Don't do it on longer clips because when it comes to exporting your product or rendering it, it's gonna take a while. There's also another option that says stabilize only, stabilize crop, stabilize auto scale, stabilize synthesize edges. I usually go for either stabilize crop or stabilize auto scale because it crops in your video and gets it a lot smoother, and it scales your video to the way it should look. The synthesize edges, it kind of like feathers out your edges and it just doesn't always look that nice, or it just like crops a part of the edge. Like imagine if this happened and my video was nice and stable, but now you just have this random black bar in front of my head. That would just be weird. Anyway, so now I've applied each one of those to all of those clips and I am rendering it. Alright, so rendering's done. The final product is finished, and we can get a good look of the comparisons that we're making. Here is option number 1, the video being stabilized with just position. Now, in that one, you can see it being really choppy, but this is still a really good option if you have something that doesn't need to be too stabilized, but just needs a little bit of stabilization, yet you don't want that whole rotation effect. This is a good option because it just changes the position of the frame, and it doesn't add in any rotation within the frame. It's really nice, but it's not good for too much movement. Okay, here's option number 2, the video being stabilized with Subspace warp. Now, I think you saw the same thing I did. And for me, that option is just gone. It's a little bit extra. Actually, no, it's not even a little bit extra. It's just plain extra. Like, I don't even know what was going on there. It literally looked like the inside of a fun house. It was disgusting. Also note that I put on the option where it was crop and scale the edges. And even with that, somehow the edges of my frame were just completely missing, and I would have to crop in so much that you would barely even, it would just be a close-up of everyone. So that, I know, is not an option. And now we're at option number 3, the video being stabilized with a position, scale, and rotation. Now, this by far has been my most favorite option out of the ones we've seen so far, and just in general, honestly. It has a really good balance between the position of your frame, how much it scales into your frame, and how much it rotates it to avoid that choppiness, but also create a really smooth pan. Now, this may not always work, but it's a pretty good pretty good fallback if you don't know what to go for. Just start with that and just see if there's anything you don't like or anything that needs to be reduced. I usually keep 50% to start with, but for this, 50% worked fine. And lastly, option number 4, the video being stabilized with perspective. Now, you could see that it kind of looked like it was watery or liquidy. Well, that's exactly what's perspective. It's good for certain things if you're working with liquids or things that have a very fluid motion. Perspective could possibly work for that. I would not recommend it if it's like human faces or things that can't be too distorted, because you just start seeing someone's face go up here and then suddenly it's like that and it just moves a bit like a river. So now you saw all 4 options for warp stabilization. And for me personally, I would go with the perspective, rotation, position option just because it is the one that works the very best for this type of clip. Okay, so now you have a good idea of all those videos, what each warp stabilization does. This is good to know because if you're new to video editing and you really want to just try every single option to see your best thing, warp stabilization takes a lot of time to actually experiment with. And you have to be patient, and hey, if you want to go and try this and check it out with different videos, go for it. But it's nice to see someone else go through the pain for you so you don't have to do something that you know will just not work for your video. So don't worry too much about it. Take it slow, take it easy, and remember to save. I hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, give me a comment below if you have any more questions or any other videos that you'd like to see. See ya. Bye. And then you, instead of seeing a nice smooth pan, you just see and there's no story. What the heck was that?